started to write as a poet.
Yes, I did.
What was this necessity to write for you?
To write poems or to write at all?
To write at all.
I think it was because I had been reading works that other people had written, so I had somehow lit up my own imagination, and somehow I never questioned this thing that finally I would write something. Of course, it took me some time. I started as a translator, actually, and after having translated poetry, also some fiction, but mostly poetry by other people, I felt this need to express myself and to compete with the authors I had been translating. I felt that, well, I can't be any worse. I had to show my own ideas and then my own images, my own ways of doing things.
You wanted to compete with foreign poets?
Yeah, mostly I think. It was like also partly competition, but partly dialogue. It was a way of communication with other writers for me, to not only to translate but to write myself.
They were contemporary poets?
Mostly contemporary, yeah, and mostly from Italy, where I also studied for a certain time, first in Turin and then in Rome.
And how Estonian Society of Poets accepted you?
Fairly, they were fairly welcoming, I must say. Already for my second poetry collection, I won the Tallinn University Literary Prize, and for the third book of mine, I won this Estonian Cultural Endowments Annual Award. Although this was a big surprise to me, because I didn't even expect to be well accepted so soon, or well, can't say really warmly, but on that level, yeah, I was. Of course, I felt as maybe several young or youngish poets or writers do, that I was an outsider. I didn't really belong to any group, and I had to also, I didn't study, well, Estonian philology or Estonian literature, as many of those who start an early career as poets do. So I felt a bit like an outsider. I had been studying abroad as well, and then it was a big and nice surprise to me when I won these prizes, and all of a sudden I was like part of the team. When I started to publish poetry, it was a time of a boom of social criticism in Estonian poetry, and I think my poetry back then was a bit more hermetic, or it was not so easily accessible, because I had somehow modeled it upon the contemporary Italian poetry, but also I had some influences from the German poetry and well, from Hans Magnus Enzensberger, who then helped me to be more open again. But yeah, I think I wasn't so straightforward or direct or back then. Then in the course of time, I think my poetry has changed a lot, and it's like much more easily accessible now. I think the environment where you write and publish and get your feedback really has a strong impact on what you're writing. But then also, yeah, I was deliberately very intertextual. I used lots of quotations from world poetry, and some people, of course, didn't like it about my poetry. They didn't like this well, the inaccessibility, or the way they had to like work through the text in order to get to the point of it. And then I think younger people also sometimes they tend to be like well, more complicated, or they don't. Well, I remember my father changed a lot. A lot of things about the music. My father was a composer, and when some pieces of his younger days were performed again over, let's say, 20 years or 25 years, then he somehow, well, reworked them and then made them simpler in a way, because he could see that some things, some intricacies were not so necessary.
And do you rework your poems?
No, I don't, but I must say that sometimes I don't even recognize them, or when of course my career as a writer hasn't been so long. I published my first collection of poems at a relatively late age. I was 32 when the first poetry book came out, but even within these years, I think I have changed so much that it's kind of strange to look at the poems that I wrote in the well, mid-2000s. It's like, well, I would sometimes like to pretend that it wasn't me who wrote them, but I think this is the case with every poet or every author, that this feeling of being alienated from your this brain children of the distant past is so strong that you're just perplexed when you're reading these poems. You think, wow, why? What was the point in them? So I have written librettos for several Estonian composers, and also one for Gavin Bryars, when an Estonian director and Bryars made a project together. And yeah, that's a very different experience, of course, from writing a novel or putting together a collection of poetry, because the other parties are involved, and it's always interesting to see the final result. You can't control the whole thing, and this is what makes it exciting. You don't know what your story or what your ideas or dialogues will look like on stage, and it's yeah, in a way I like it, because usually you don't write these things for people you don't trust. For Tõnu Kõrvits, I wrote one libretto that was based on the life and also on the text by an Estonian poet, Mārja Kangro, because that was his idea. He kind of had become well, acquainted with her poetry, and then somehow was also enthralled by it, and so she was a mad woman, and I think this was something that also attracted the composer in a way. So he commissioned this libretto based on her texts, and then the next opera was also connected with this subject of well, mad people in literature in a way. That was a literature teacher, and her single student. They would go together for a walk in town in order to find this the house of the mad poetess, and finally it turns out that the teacher herself is a little bit out of her right mind, and they never find the house. And, but it was it sounds kind of absurd and ironic, but Tõnu is a very lyrical person, actually, very poetic. So it was kind of a strange mixture of well, some kind of imaginary, hallucinatory, poetic world, and then this well, kind of sadness about these people who try to be something or try to find something that is not there. Like to my last book, the one that now has been translated into Latvian, this Klāslap's Stikla, bērns, a conservative website published a review about how women nowadays are completely well, out of their right mind, and they are like it's their fault that this world will collapse, and we don't have the necessary population to feed the retired people in the future because the women don't reproduce, and this horrible liberal feminist ideas, this kind of political correctness, this is something that has, well, doomed our world, and it was so completely ideological, and I could even see that the person probably hadn't read the book, but had only read some interviews or heard some interviews over the radio or seen them on TV. So it was just the one topic of the book. It was not even about the book itself, or it was not about the several other things that are there, but only this one aspect that he didn't like, and so he felt like he had to write a review about it. It was really a review in the quotation marks only, but it was a hilarious experience, and I also like these comments that followed this kind of a review. Of course, it's fiction, it's literature, and even when you're writing your memoirs, the people you're talking about, they are already, to a certain extent, the characters that you have invented. And the events, maybe if 2 or 3 different persons were writing about the same events, it would be 3 completely different stories. So there is this fictional moment in any documentary writing. But for this topic, I thought that the invented barbarity of life, invented cruelty of life is not as strong as the one with the touch of reality. So I kept all the names and the events and the parts of the diary, So I thought it would be also a stronger message for people who have had the same kind of experience, so that they would feel that there are others who share this experience and they are not alone. Because if it were a completely invented story, then again people who have suffered from the similar experience, similar problems, they might think that okay, yeah, here we have a story, but it's just a story. Maybe we are still alone with our experience. But in this way, it's like also a kind of a political thing for me, that to be able and to find the courage to speak about these things openly. So this would be like my attempt to liberate people who have had these problems in life, to liberate them from this feeling of guilt and shame, and this feeling that they are maybe not normal because these things have happened to them. I think the world is still comparatively well, cruel and Darwinistic, and I know people who have really hidden this experience, that they have had well, a fetus, they have conceived a fetus, a baby who has some developmental disorder or some serious disabilities. They just don't want to talk about it because if they have an abnormal baby or have had an abnormal fetus, that might already kind of tell implicitly that they are not normal either. And this is something that has to be spoken about.
Do you believe in a better future?
Oh, well, yeah, stupidly so, I do. I think it's, to a certain extent, it might be genetic, that people just have this inclination or this tendency to believe in a better future, or they don't. And I somehow, after a while, I bounce back, and I still get this feeling that, okay, one day things will be better. And though at some moments the ecological catastrophe doesn't seem to be so far away, and we are really like on the verge of some big ecological disaster, and well, there are so many irresolvable political conflicts. There are so many irresolvable or seemingly irresolvable problems in the world. I still have this feeling that, yeah, there is hope in the. Yeah, I think it's also, yeah, somehow it's connected to this well, mindset, maybe the genetic tendency towards a certain mindset. But on the other hand, I think it's also the only way to survive, in a way. You have to believe that there is something to live for. It's yeah, well, if tomorrow is the last day on Earth, then why behave well? Why should we, I mean, have any concerns about nature, environment, other people? I mean, it's the last day, and we don't. Well, I think also, like, our ethics and morality is based on this belief in the future. Of course, we have this famous, notorious preamble in our constitution that says that the purpose of the Estonian state is maintaining Estonian nation, culture, and now language as well. Language was added in 2007, I think, in the mid 2000s. And so, but it's a good thing because, yeah, well, in a way, because this is something that the writers or any kind of literati rely on when they ask for money. They say, well, it's already in our constitution. If you don't give us money, this is like against our constitution. And I also understand those people for whom it seems to be the most terrible catastrophe if the Estonian nation and people and culture should die in the future. And it's absolutely understandable that this is, we don't want to die, we want to continue our existence as living beings. It's an elementary thing. And it's also understandable how we kind of transfer this idea to our environment. Of course, we want it to last forever. We want to have people who would share our experience, who would know the same things. So this is why it's so easy to, while you are abroad and you would like to be anonymous, and then you find an Estonian, and it's still, there are some things that you share and that you can rely on. Of course, it's only understandable that also the writers who are not able anymore to switch to English, as for example, even most people of my generation, it's already set for them. It's decided for them. They are only able to write in Estonian. So it's obvious that they would want the Estonian culture and language last forever, or to have this idea that it won't die tomorrow. For myself, it's like when I read the news about the life being possible only for a certain amount of years, although I will be dead by then, it's still depressing. To think of anything like this planet dying is depressing. And any kind of any kind of end to our life is it's not nice to think about it, because then we lose our motivation to do something when we are thinking about these things that inevitably will happen in the future.
But what about writing?
It creates this illusion that I do something that I can share with others and that would last longer than me. Although the present day situation is quite the opposite. It's often the case that a big novel, a big sensational novel will be talked about only for a year or for 2 years, and then it's finished. Then there's new production that is coming in, and it's I think this hope for immortality is well, maybe it's not that much there as it used to be in the old days. Like for the Romantics, it was the highest aspiration. They were writing for posterity, and they always had this immortality on mind when they were writing something. It was not for the present day. It was not the immediate feedback or some kind of immediate fame. It was like the immortal name that they wanted to create for themselves. But I think nowadays people really care more about this immediate response. It's like in the social media you can see that many people post their poems there. This is the first place to publish anything, and then they get within the first 2 hours they get their 200 likes, and they're happy with that. And the next day somebody else will publish post their poems, and then will get his or her likes. And it's much faster now, this machine of cultural production. But still, I think basically many people still want to do something to last, that would last, and that would give meaning, kind of lasting meaning to their lives.